It's the eve of the Champions Chess Tour finals in Oslo, Norway. Magnus Carlsen, world number one, is prepping hard for them, and we're looking back therefore at last year's final, played between the man himself, Mulberry Craftsman, and his opponent, Say It Ain't So. Wesley's a pro. There he is, absolute cheese grater for abs, and what a game this is. One of the best from their final, and I never covered it before. Let's check it out. Wesley opens with pawn to b3 here. They've got 15 minutes each and they're playing with a mouse and laptop and computer and everything, although they're in the same room. So now we see Magnus playing a bit of copycat, but after bishop b2, this would probably be unwise. Whoops, this one. So instead we see knight f6. Sometimes white shatters the pawns there, plays against the structure. Not this game. Wesley goes ambitious. Magnus fianchettos. We get the explosive c4, castles, and the bishops crossing swords. Not advised in church, but okay on the chessboard. And now you can play d4 here, clamp on e5, right? But Wesley goes e3 and takes the game in a weird direction in a minute. First e5 from Magnus, knight e2, rook e8, all looks pretty normal. Pawn to c ships, and now this is the moment. Some of the common moves for white, right, looking a bit normal, but Wesley plays the strange pawn to e4. Why would he give himself that filthy hole on d4 that could one day be occupied? Well, okay, he does clamp on d5. Magnus was half threatening it, of course, and although he's fixed this structure, one day he can maybe arrange f4 or d4 in the right circumstances, or b4 or i4. We've just gone nuts. So a6 was played by Magnus, still leaving the queenside pieces on the Etienne back row. These glamour models, honestly, just breaking the rules willy-nilly, and after this castles from Wesley, we get this expansion with b5. I love how Magnus switches plans here, takes his eye off d5 for a minute, goes for this break, and with b4 possibly a threat, Wesley goes a3, b4, Magnus can do it, but don't love this move. He somehow just gets outfoxed here, because knight beats d7 played, d3, all looking pretty natural. The rook hits this file where we can see there's some action going on. Wesley does the same, doing some D, and after this seahorse is born, we really start to see some of the pressure being exerted on the white position. Already looking at these weakened pawns here. So the bishop drops to A1. Very, very ugly move. That one ought to be ashamed of itself. Does open the eyes of the rook to do some defensive work. You've now got some problems when black opens the file, and that's exactly what Magnus does. How would you recapture here? Potato, not easy to see. On the one hand, this is nice, this pawn recaptures, so you can then go b4, but then still the knight does spin and get some squares. Okay, Wesley goes with this one, and after the exchange, yes, white's first to the b file, but there's an issue. Bishop e6 completes the development, rook d1 covering this miserable pawn, and Magnus challenges the file. He's very quick to the punch there. Of course he wants a queen exchange. Gary the Goat would be absolutely beside himself. Loves to see Magnus grinding hard in an endgame, but we don't yet get it. Queen c2 is played, preparing rook b1, but Magnus says, aha, not quite so fast, Sonny Jim. Invades already to the third rank. This is incisive play. So Wesley does not want to swap. The knight starts hopping. He's just in a tough spot. Weakened pawns, weakened squares. It's better for black. So instead, he goes queen c1. It's given the miss. Wasn't technically best, but he's going for something a bit weird. Maybe dreams of an attack one day, right? Even though Magnus is winning on the queen side. He covers this pawn for now. We see knight f to d7, spinning round, and now Wesley completely changes the game. Magnus has got a lot of improving moves here. Run some pawns down, maybe you bring a rook, all sorts of different things, right? Put the bishop somewhere good, but Wesley now changes everything with this pawn to d4 for the score. We get captures by Magnus. The knight takes back, and this is truly excellent from the former world champion. Well, classical. He's the current world champion, Rapid and Blitz. The pawn's under fire here. Threat to take it. Do you retreat with the queen, rook c8, that kind of thing? Well, no. These top guys, they love to go active. This is why he's one of the best, world's best, terrible sentence general managers, because he knows when to give up the dark squared bishop. Rook recaptures here, and he gambits a pawn. Watch this. He goes knight e5, double horsey attack in the center, sabres out, that pawn drops off the board, but bang, there's an octopus that Stocktopus can be proud of. The queen is hit, and this c4 pawn is absolute toast. You know, what do you do about that? And it just gets better here. Wesley goes queen d1. You know, he didn't want a Botez gambit, not just yet. Could have also gone queen b1, better move apparently, according to the all-seeing overlord engine. But now this pawn drops. It was going to anyway, and the rook is under fire. Supreme calculation from Magnus. And why can't you do this? Pick up 2 minors for a rook. Well, then this awful bishop drops in the corner. That one coming back to bite. So you can't chop the knight. What else to do? You could go to d4 with the rook, but Wesley tries this very tricky move. And the point is, if queen takes, looking quite natural, now you can do this because you've decoyed the queen away from the attack of the bishop. So of course Magnus didn't do that. And if knight takes, not played, then again there's tricks. This time I did not see this one at all, but my faithful friend helped me. Knight b5. You hit the queen, and okay, you can take with either pawn. Let's say this one, keep the outside runners and everything, and then the bishop takes here. And although black is a bit better, pawn ahead, outside runners, white's got the bishop pair and ideas of doing some weirdness on the dark squares. So not the counterplay you want to give. Therefore, pawn not touched. Magnus Carlsen plays bishop b3. Great move, asking again an annoying question. Maybe this is why earlier the queen was better on b1. But it is where it is. It comes to f1 now. Who wants the king and queen like that? Not ideal. Honey, I'm home, but not the kind of home you want right now. You need to be attacking. And after this move of bishop c4, we already see problems with the passivity of Wesley's pieces. Because if you now come back here, well, Magnus has actually made progress. Now the knight's covered. Now you can take. Now there's no rook takes. You don't even need this tactic at the end of the line. All base is covered. This is going to be a home run if you're not careful. So this knight drops to e2. Wesley completely forgetting which way his pieces are supposed to move, and it's getting so dangerous now because after queen takes on c5, that's a pawn ahead for black, and what dangerous pawns they are and how these minors are swarming. So rook d4 is played. It is covered just about. Now we see queen a3, and it's such good kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Mushrooms.
Understanding of what Wesley's trying to do, right? Or foresight, let's say. Because if you go f4 now, no good. You can play c5. You cleared this square by the queen when it moved away. Where's the rook going to go? Let's say d6. Now the knight hops. Now you're getting in on the dark squares. And the reason you had to kick the rook first is so that when the knight moves, the bishop doesn't drop. The knight was defending the bishop. Magnus just a step ahead. So Wesley goes h3 to cover all of that ninja stuff. But now this knight drops back, already giving this one a square. But even more than that, there's a tactical issue with f4. Bang, there goes this one. Queen takes. Again, that queen is just overloaded. Supreme tactics. So instead we see queen c1. Wesley trying to bail out, get the queens off. No time to take the knight on e2, or the queen on a3 drops. So Magnus takes. Gary starts bleating. He's loving it. The knight recaptures here. And bishop b5, truly anticipating this f4 thing and then the bishop dropping. And now it does come anyway. Knight c4 played, e5 takes the space, and more importantly opens the eyes of this sniper, but this one drops back. An absolute monster defensive piece, hits the rook, and they're playing on seconds here. Magnus with 9, Wesley with 23. Anything can happen. The rook invades. c5 played. There's a sneaky backwards attack. So rook d3 on the board. Looks like you're walking into a discovery, but say you did something like this, well, no good actually. White takes, and you pick up 2 minors for the rook. Not a good exchange. So we come back here. Now we see this one played. Or did I say that the wrong way around? You pick up a rook for 2 minors. Either way, not good. So the pawn's now advancing down. Rook b3 hits the bishop, and you could defend it, but remember they're on seconds. Bang, Magnus makes a split decision to go for the counterplay. Take my bishop, I take yours. It's great calculation, even if it's not the best move technically. So knight d3 from Wesley. He should have actually gone in for that line, technically best, but we won't go down all that crazy rabbit hole. We'll stick with the game. The pawn hits the rook. It forces this exchange of minor pieces. Now the check, of course, king g7, and now with the threat of check and picking up this horrible bishop in the corner, Wesley's got to go passive once more, defend it. Magnus picks up a pawn. His position is collapsing. Wesley So's. So the king kicks the rook out of dodge. It jumps back over to a3, keeping this rook honest by attacking this bishop. Now we see f5. Why? Well, the pawn was under fire anyway. No king g3, of course, and it does at least mangle that black structure. We've got one left that only a mother could love, and it gives Wesley some counterplay. Really nice play by him. 3 pawns down, but he's still fighting. King f8 played. Rook c1 hits the knight. Saves itself. Now bishop c6. There could be nasties on the way. Knight d4 in. Such a powerful piece, and so finally, Wesley, you can imagine, is more than happy to get rid of the bane of his life. Now we see captures. Bishop b5 opens the eyes of the rook, and after f4, check, king g7, rook c7, out of nowhere, Wesley has really drummed up some counterplay. e6 on the way, or bishop e8. So we get the check. The king scurries back to the corner. Magnus marches up the board. Now this check played. Which way do you go? King g5. Correct assessment of the position. He does ditch this pawn, which Wesley takes. Very dangerous e-pawn now. Magnus goes after the bishop, and he's just seen enough ahead here. Because if you actually save this bishop like this, then the a-pawn is running way too fast, basically. And if you move to try and get it, Black can probably defend in most lines, plus this one ends up getting weak, or this one's running right. Many different lines. We're not going to click down them. Black is winning, so Wesley just says, let's go, vamos, push that one, give the bishop here, e7, and where are you actually saving this game, or how are you saving it, right? What is the winning move? There's only one here for Black, which Magnus does find. Okay, we can all find a check. Luckily it works just because the knight takes the g2 square. So you have to then step to here, which means you can check here, and after the king steps, now you've cleared the e-file since the knight left e3. You're just in time behind the pawn. Great calculation. Wesley, of course, attacks, but now you stick it on this solid cemento square. Drop a knight, yes, but remember you gained a bishop already. So Magnus is still 2 pawns to the good, and his a-pawn's running. What to do? Wesley chucks in the check, saying, please take, give me this one, gimme, gimme, gimme. I take here, I roll around. Still Black is winning, which is depressing if you're playing Black, not if you're playing White. But why give that counterplay? Magnus steps here and Wesley resigns the game. There's just nothing, right? This pawn's running, this pawn's running, this pawn's running, and this one's well under lock and key. It's a lost endgame, and it wasn't premature. Magnus didn't just win this game though, went on to win the whole event, and this is what we're salivating over this year. He's back, so are the top guys. What a tournament to come. I'll do my best to get recaps up each night, but gonna be tricky because I do have some evening events lined up. It's that time of year, right? Out with the friends. Thanks very much for watching. Have a look at the video on screen for another incredible game of chess, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.